Hey guys, today on Mastering Your Neptune Apex Controller, your tank is so hot it's almost on fire and you need to cool it down quick. Okay, so not literally on fire, but today we are beating back the heat with up to the minute notifications for skyrocketing tank temps, changing the way you cool your house by following your fan or chiller's on and off cycles, and even a tip to measure how much your chiller actually costs you each month, which I'll tell you right up front, it's probably less than running a heater. You've heard us talk a lot about tank temp being one of the quickest ways to crash a tank, especially when it climbs into that danger zone. So today we're using two tools to protect your tank from the blistering heat. First being the highly effective low-cost fan option, and the other a more heavy-duty cooling tool, the chiller. With that, let's dive right into setting up your fan, and since it's basically a chiller that uses evaporation to keep your tank cool, we'll use the chiller task function to set it up on your Apex. Just plug your fan into your energy bar, find the chiller task function, choose your outlet, rename it something easy like cool fan, and set your min and max temp ranges. In the Master Your Neptune Apex heater episode, we set our heaters to come on at 78 degrees and off at 78.5. So for my fan, I'm going to set it to turn on if my tank is over 79 degrees and off when it gets below 78.5. Push the send button and I'm done. Now when your tank temp rises to 79 degrees, the fan will turn on until it drops the temp back to 78.5 and then won't come back on again until it goes back to 79 again. But is that enough? And how do you know if you need more than one fan to solve the problem? Well, the first step is to set up temperature alerts to warn you when your fan isn't keeping up, which we'll set up next. But there's also another trick I'll show you in just a second to use Apex logging to monitor your fan's performance as well. So since temperature is so critical and the best way to prevent inevitable catastrophe is by knowing the moment something isn't right, if there's anything to take away from today's video, it's this next step to set up temperature alerts, which only takes a few clicks to do. Just find the probe alarm task function, choose your temp probe, and set the min and max alerts, which for me is 77 and 79.5, then hit send. I like to set the max temp alarm a little higher than my fan set point to give it some time to cool my tank down, but if I start getting those high temp notifications and alarm, I know that I need to step up my cooling game, like adding even more fans or even more aggressively cooling my entire house during that peak heat of the day. Although the problem with cranking down your home's air conditioning is, how do you hone in on when that peak heat of the day is? Well, you could get a PM1 module and a second temp probe to monitor your ambient room temp, or you can follow trends in your temperature graph log, but there's another really neat tool that you can use from your Apex on your fan outlet that will show you the exact number of times and specific time of day that your fan typically turns on and off. Simply go into the gear icon for your fan outlet, find the enable button next to log, and push send. Now you can find that output log icon on your dashboard, click it and see any time that your fan turned on, how long it took to cool your tank down, and then turn back off again, along with what times of day it normally toggles on and off, meaning that I can use that information to add another fan to share the workload or adjust my home's AC if I see that my fan is typically on between like 1 p.m. and 5 p.m. Although using fans or cooling down your house is probably the solution to a majority of reefers' high tank temp issues, sometimes you just need a bigger hammer to get the job done, and the answer for that is a chiller. Unlike a simple fan, there are a few challenges and potential issues to solve when running a chiller, like monitoring the feed pump in case it fails, or potential leaks from the chiller from being plumbed outside the sump, or one of the more common chiller concerns for some reefers: what is the added cost and is it worth it? I'll say there are a couple of opinions out there for setting up a chiller. Either you let your chiller and its internal thermostat control your tank temp while using the Apex as a safety backup, or you set your chiller to like 77 degrees and let your Apex control when the chiller comes on using the Apex temp probe. I'm gonna go with the second option, not only because that's the way that the chiller task function sets it up for you, but also because having your Apex in control allows you to more accurately balance your heaters and chiller from fighting against each other. So with that, the first thing to do is set up your chiller feed pump. You certainly could use your return pump instead, but for the ease of the chiller maintenance without shutting down your entire system, I recommend using a feed pump or at least a manifold, which will allow you to isolate your chiller. So plug in your pump, find the outlet gear icon, rename it something like chiller feed, choose advanced for the control type, and set your fallback and set both to on. Along with that, if you're like me and use a feed mode for deep tank maintenance like cleaning out the sump periodically, and you don't want your chiller pump to be on, you can add in a line that says if feed D000 then off, which will keep the pump off until you're done cleaning. Now we can set up that actual chiller itself using the chiller task function. Plug your chiller in, set its internal thermostat to something like 77 degrees so that it's ready to cool the moment your Apex turns it on. Find the chiller task function, rename your outlet to chiller, and set your min and max temp ranges. Like I mentioned earlier, my heaters are set to 78 and 78.5, so in order to keep my chiller from cooling the tank too far, I'm going to set the min and max temp range to 78.5 and 80.5, which gives my chiller a full 2-degree window to operate so that it's not turning off and on hundreds of times a day. Running it with that wider set point is particularly important to keep the on and off cycles of your chiller's compressor down to a minimum. And 2 degrees is actually the factory operating range for the JBJ chiller I have here, where it has a plus or minus 1 degree variance. So be sure to check your chiller's manual to help you set your range. Here's something to keep in mind also about sizing the right chiller for your tank and using your Apex to control it. Check your chiller's amperage draw first. Your Energy Bar 832 has outlets that can handle up to 7 amps each, which covers most of the smaller chillers like the JBJ 1/15 horsepower at 2 amps and the JBJ quarter horsepower at 6 amps. However, if you need a larger chiller for your tank, I would recommend picking up a separate Energy Bar 4, which has 3 outlets rated at 8 amps and a 4th outlet that can handle up to 12 amps. Actually, it might be a good idea to run your chiller on a separate EB4 Energy Bar anyway, so that you don't use up half of your Energy Bar 832's power draw with one single outlet. Now let's solve those potential chiller issues that I mentioned earlier, starting with your chiller feed pump and knowing the moment that it fails or when it's bogging down and might need some maintenance. We can do that with monitoring the power draw of your feed pump, which will send you an alert when the pump is drawing less than normal wattage or 0 wattage at all by choosing the power usage alarm task function, choosing your chiller feed outlet, setting the min and max power ranges, and pushing send. If you let your pump run for a few days before setting up this task, your Apex will actually refine that min and max range alert window for you automatically, so you don't have to just guess. The next potential issue using a chiller is leaks and catching them before they have time to cause some serious damage to your stand or floors. In nearly every Master Your Apex episode, I mentioned using leak detection sensors, not only because I've personally seen and had my fair share of leaks and spills, but also because it's just one of the most valuable protection tools that you can add to your system that most likely will save you hundreds or thousands of dollars in damage when the inevitable happens. So with that, let's set up the LDK leak detection kit by placing your sensors in the cabinet or stand near your chiller. Plug them into port 1 and 2 on your LDK FMM module, plug the FMM into your Apex, find the LDK task function, choose your FMM, select your sensors, and hit send. I also like to rename my sensors Leak 1 and Leak 2 to make them easier to find, which you can do by finding the new FMM switches in the unused dashboard tiles, pull them down, click on the gear icon for each, and rename them. So now you're set up to receive those email, text, and notification when water hits the floor, but let's take it one step further and shut down the chiller feed pump in case a leak happened, which you can do by adding in a new line to your feed pump outlet that says, if leak 1 closed, then off, and if leak 2 closed, then off, and you're set. Just like we did with the fan outlet, you can also use the Apex temperature probe graphs or turn on the logging tool to monitor your chiller's on and off cycles, and then use that info to get an idea of how hard your chiller is working to keep your tank temp down, which can help you decide if you need a more aggressive cooling approach, like adding in more fans or a larger chiller, or even changing your home's AC settings. As I said earlier, I think one of the most common questions about chillers, and potentially a big decision factor for running one, is the cost. And here's the deal. Using a chiller will likely cost you less than running a heater in your tank, or less than the multiple light fixtures that you have running in and day out. For example, a 1/4 horsepower JBJ chiller at 6 amps operates at about 690 watts and likely only runs a handful of times each day for just a few months out of the year. But if you really want to see what your chiller or other equipment's costing you a month, you can use the super handy Apex Power Log tool and the electric rate from your bill. All you need to do is a quick search of your bill or an internet search for your town's kilowatt per hour cost. For example, here in Golden Valley, Minnesota, a residential cost is about 13 cents per kilowatt hour. Then find the Power Log icon at the top of your Fusion dashboard, hit the drop-down menu at the top and enter your town's rate and hit send. Now you can see what all of your Apex connected gear costs you per day and per month as a whole, or use the comparison tool to isolate individual outlets like the one for your chiller. Actually, this is one of the unique features of the Energy Bar A32 that efficiency junkies can hang their hat on, because it allows you to game your system to find the most energy efficient way to run your gear. Like maybe you don't run your skimmer 24/7, or you change the way that you heat or cool your home, or you make the case to your significant other to upgrade those lights over your tank. Either way, knowledge is power and knowing's half the battle, especially when you know what hits the fan. In this next episode over here, I share a huge list of alerts that your Apex can send you to keep you in the know about your tank, and within that even bigger list of the 70 plus more things to look for when one of those alerts show up on your phone. So prep yourself for a journey of what ifs and check it out.